So coming from Fortune, Palantir says SaaS is dead. Now, it's very important in these modern times we don't lose track of human nature. People lie. Do not believe everything a tech bro has to say because it may come as a surprise, but tech bros, they lie too. Tech bros are not necessarily the most moral and ethical human beings in the entire world. But we should listen to the tech bros because sometimes they actually have points to make. And every once in a while, they don't actually lie. What they're saying actually has something to do with common sense. So I think this is an interesting article and an interesting concept to look at, especially if you take Palantir out of it, right? You say the word Palantir, the name Palantir now, and everybody loses their mind, right? They have a story about Palantir. They have a story about AI. They have a story about Palantir. As soon as the word leaves your lips, all of a sudden people are screaming. So one of the things I want you to think about this is think about this story if it wasn't Palantir. What if it was some other company? Fill in the blank company there. Louis Rossmann says SaaS is dead. How about that? And then think about kind of what this means for the future, especially as a technology professional. So this is one thing, having been in the technology world for holy crap, over 30 years now. I shipped off to Basic in March of 1996. Crap. Old age comes way too quick. Anyways, one of the interesting things being in the tech world for so long is basically you see paradigms in technology, architectures in technology come and they go. And one of the interesting things with this whole process is that some people just cannot keep up with modern times. One of the stories I talk about is way back when I still had my store, AWS came out. So AWS came out 2007, 2008. One of my employees, he was looking at AWS, and I still remember when we sat down and I was like, I just, how do you connect to it with FTP? Again, remember, this was years ago. And literally, it's like, okay, well, AWS seems fine, but what's the FTP connection to this thing? And that was a bit of a bridge too far for me almost 20 years ago. I was like, I've got other crap to deal with, right? But I mean, that sounds like a joke. That sounds funny, but it's serious, right? If you're used to FTP or SMB or whatever protocol that we used at the time, getting files from point A to point B, and that's what you've been doing for about 10 years, all of a sudden AWS comes out, and oh my God, this is an amazing piece of technology. This is an amazing stack. And I don't know how to get files onto it. Right? That can be a real problem, right? But anyways, architectures come, architectures go. We talk about this with NoSQL, right? Me, a big NoSQL fanboy, schema-less database system, right? You look at relational databases, they have schemas, right? Tables and relationships between tables and all that kind of stuff. You go to the NoSQL world, right? You're not locked into a schema anymore, which, can be good, can be horrible, all at the exact same time. It's like, yeah, right? Again, service-oriented architecture, data lakes versus simple, file storage systems, that type of thing. These are all different ways that systems, you design and you build systems to pull out or create solutions for your customers, right? One of the big things to understand that as a technology professional, we do not sell servers. That is not what we get paid for. We do not get paid to maintain platforms. We don't get paid for any of that. What do we get paid for? We get paid to provide solutions using technology that are of value to our customers. Now, to be clear, many times we have no idea why this crap is valuable to the customer, but that's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is like, sir, I think this is dumb. Then they look at you and say, well, I'm paying you to do it. You go, sorry, yes, sir, right? Right? We provide solutions that, again, are of some value. And so what's really interesting with this AI world, which becomes very fascinating, again, think about going to schemaless architecture. Think about going to service-oriented architecture back when you were used to client service systems. Think about going to data lakes if you were used to a normal seance or whatever like that. And think about what happens when we go to the AI world, right? we are used to interacting with kind of static applications, right? We think about this with AI. Hey, look, AI can vibe code for us. AI can create the front end. AI can create the report. AI can do all these things. But one of the things I want you to consider is how boomer are you to be thinking about vibe coding a front end? Because really all you're doing is you're just taking a human out of the loop of creating the front end. But at the end of the day, you still get the same basic static front end that you had before. You have all this power of artificial intelligence. And what are you doing? You're using it to create React front ends. Damn. Like a boomer would. If a boomer knew what the fuck React was. But anyways, right? Something to be thinking about in this AI world, right? With these massive database systems that we have nowadays, right? Damn near infinitely scalable, incredibly fast, relatively inexpensive database systems, right? When we think about file storage systems, again, infinitely scalable as long as you got the money. Do remember, storage and bandwidth costs money. But anyways, as long as you can swipe the credit card, damn near infinitely. Imagine if the inputs into the blob and the outputs out of the blob were dynamic. Right? You didn't go to a user interface to pull out something. You didn't go to a user interface to put things in. What if there was just kind of this amorphous interfacey type system? Maybe you talk to it, maybe you show it a picture, maybe you type. And basically you can just get down to the essence of a prompt. Bob purchased 5 shovels. And then it could simply create a receipt. Bob, with all of their information, shovels cost $5 a piece, sales tax in your particular area is, blah, here's your receipt. You swipe the credit card, and then inputs, again, into the blob that Bob purchased said shovels. Right? Think about if you dramatically rethink the fundamental interactions you have with data. But then as I say it, also consider that you're going to have to fundamentally rethink resiliency and redundancy and disaster recovery. Right? Because that's the thing. The 22-year-olds are like, yeah, of course that makes sense. Oh yeah, of course everything Eli is saying right now makes sense. It's good to see a boomer like Eli, like realize we're in the future. It's like, well, yeah, this is the future. But again, what is disaster recovery on an amorphous blob? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you got a SQL database, like I'm using MySQL, MariaDB, MS SQL, whatever else. I've got a database. What is disaster recovery? At the base level, I back that damn thing up so I have access to it. If we're using like fault tolerance or high availability or something like that, maybe I'm doing a replication strategy so that this database replicates to a database in a different site. So this database gets wiped out by a biblical flood. Everything's up and running. Right? Oh, okay. Yeah, right. That's what is disaster recovery for amorphous blob? I don't have the answer. This is not a rhetorical question. I don't know the answer to that. That is why I'm passing this off to the 25-year-olds out there to go figure out what that looks like. But that's kind of interesting here. We take a look at Palantir and saying that SaaS is dead, right? According to Danny Lutkus, a development strategist at Palantir Technologies, quote, SaaS is dead. We were talking specifically about Palantir's approach to supplying software for supply chain management. The other thing I do hate with all these things is, wow, you mean an employee for this company that's supposed to be like worth gazillions of dollars is saying that their competition is worthless? Oh, I can't believe that. Anyways, I had seen the CEO of Advance Auto Parts speak at a UBS global consumer and retail conference. He mentioned that Advance Auto is working with Palantir for an inventory replenishment and pricing solution. That surprised me. I did not know Palantir was playing in the SCM realm. That is because Palantir does not provide off-the-shelf software, which are the supply chain software companies I've closely followed for years. 46% of their revenue for Palantir last year came from commercial clients rather than government. Mr. Lucas Lucas said their largest commercial vertical was manufacturing, and that virtually all of their manufacturing clients were using their solution in their supply chains. Quote, what Palantir does is a bit different, Lucas said. He described how decades ago, companies developed their own software, but this was risky. There was a high failure rate and the total cost of ownership was high. Hence, enterprise software and eventually supply chain development software companies arose. These would become companies like SAP and all those kinds of things. Let's see here. Palantir uses a forward deployed engineers, quote, to provide solutions that are specifically tailored to their customers. These engineers determine the capabilities and processes their customers want to develop to fill the gaps left by their standard software. Essentially, the Palantir solution is built on top of solutions like SAP and Oracle. The Palantir platform is used to build these new company-specific capabilities. This toolkit approach builds custom software. Initially, Palantir engineers do this, but their customers can also use the toolkit for this purpose. These capabilities can be developed without upgrading existing software systems or replacing legacy software, a process that could take years. Palantir has an abstraction layer, Mr. Lucas continued. Quote, it's an operating system that allows us to essentially sit on top of whatever the underlying infrastructure is and the architecture is and define data integration, both structured and unstructured, define logic integration, both deterministic and non-deterministic. The platform also defines which decisions can be made by which users and how the data they generate is written back to the underlying system. So I kind of think this is just an interesting thing to be looking at, like with companies like Palantir right now, because so much of this stuff in this whole AI world is all about AI is more dangerous than nuclear weapons, or AI is going to solve science, cure disease, or what other garbage. One of the things that gets left out of these whole conversations is like, yeah, but how? What does the architecture look like? Great. Your AI is going to cure disease. Cool. Can you get a whiteboard for me and diagram that out? Hey, what do you mean diagram it out? No, I'm just interested. Like, so what data stores is it going to connect to? How is that information going to be pulled in the system? Where is the actual processing done? How is this stored for future? Like actually diagram out what this AI solution that's going to solve science is going to look like. And that's usually the point at the meetup, where the person with the beer looks at me one last time and walks the ever-loving fuck away, right? But I think this is kind of a curious thing to be looking at with the whole AI world, is the idea, again, like how do we design architectures, especially when you have legacy systems? Like what Palantir is talking about here is that their system will actually be able to interact with the legacy systems, right? So if you already have SAP, if you already have MS SQL, if you already have, all the crap that's been created over the years, right? You can have that. But again, think about this with AI systems. AI systems can now interact with keyboards. AI systems can interact with the screen. It can do mouse controls and all that kind of thing. And so one of the things, you can create an AI system to interact with the legacy systems that you already have. But again, how are you going to send it commands? Where is the AI system going to store data? How are you going to architect this system? And again, architect it in such a way that it's stable, reliable, fault tolerant, and all of those different types of things. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing to be looking at here with Palantir, where they're talking about the next architecture design style for the technology world. So even if you hate Palantir, right? Even if you despise them, right? An interesting thing to look at is basically how are they building the future? What does the future that they're building, what do the foundations of that actually look like? You know, what do the beams and the rafters and the roofing and all that actually look like? So what do you need to learn for the future, so that, you know, you're not trying to maintain Windows NT systems in an AWS world. So anyways, something to think about there. Palantir says SaaS is dead. And actually, when you do look at it, it does look more like, but aren't you really saying that your system is going to work on top of SaaS? So isn't it really the company is going to buy the $50 a month Salesforce license and then pay another $50 license from you? That's the other thing to be careful about here. Like, they say something is dead, but one of the things you can be concerned about, like these salespeople will come to your company and they'll be like, yeah, That's dead. And so when you hear dead, when I hear dead, I'm like, great. I buy your product, I implement your product, and I rip that piece of crap out and never have to pay those bastards another dime. One of the things you do have to be careful about with things being dead is maybe like, well, no, what we really mean is you're going to keep paying Salesforce $50 a month per license. Plus, you're going to pay our fees on top of it. And then you're like, that's a definition of dead. That's a definition of dead. So anyways, what do you think about this? Put your thoughts down below. Do remember, if you like these videos or these episodes, they are on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. Link is in the doobly-doo, along with a link to my LinkedIn account if you want to follow the other things that I do. With that, see y'all later.